But to kind of get back to the roster here, Ethan, I look at this personally, this rotation that we have here of the starters and the backups, we've still got some things to shore up with two open roster spots for the main roster, as well as the one open two-way spot. And I was actually just reading a tweet, Ethan. We did extend offers to Riley Minix and Harrison Ingram, which I highly think that they will accept. But according to Paul Garcia, like technically as of right now, actually all three two-way spots are open for the Spurs because they haven't accepted them, at this moment. And maybe there's like a thing that could happen where we could tell Riley Minix and Harrison Ingram, or one of the two, that, hey, even though we offered you this, we don't want you to accept it. Or if you do accept it, we're just going to release you anyway. And, they don't accept it. And then we go with somebody else. That's getting in the weeds for the two-way contracts. But the point is there could be more flexibility down there. But the bigger thing I was getting at, those two open roster spots down there that we still got to fill out. But when it comes to the kind of 10-man rotation of who's going to be on the floor most consistently, I really like this starting lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, and Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, we've had that up for a while. But now with the addition of Kelly Olynyk here, Ethan, we've got a Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, and Luke Cornett backup rotation. Now, as I say all of this, Ethan, there could be some things that switch up. We've texted a little bit about it, but I just was kind of setting the stage here and wanted to read all that off, of course, for the audio listeners as well. So what are your thoughts on this new rotation and, kind of how Kelly Olynyk can fit into the front court? Because we've kind of talked about everybody else for the most part.
Yeah, my favorite thing about it, Jude, is really only one guy who has to play one position, and that's Luke Cornett. Like, legitimately, he is a center. He can't really play four. Everyone else can play a mixture of positions. So if you're not satisfied with Steph at the two, Harrison at the three, there's a mix where Harrison moves to the four. You got, but those 10 names that you mentioned, I think, are definitely the 10 rotational pieces with some spot minutes from Julian Champagnie and Carter Bryant at some points in the season. But I just love the versatility and the defensive ability of this team, because that was the biggest weakness in the last couple of years, is we weren't switchable, we weren't lengthy, we didn't have the 3-and-D guys, and I think now we actually have a roster that's full of them, and a couple even in the third string unit that won't get that many meaningful minutes. So it's a good position to be in for once, to actually have to decide who gets to play and who doesn't, because in years past it wasn't that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's two things that kind of stand out to me there. We're just building depth. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you were mentioning Julian. So here's the scenario that I've already played out in my head, and we've talked about it. With Victor, there's probably inevitably going to be some games where we just rest our boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the franchise, he's the prized possession. Luke Cornett will move into that starting center position. And as much as, full time, and we were kind of texting about this, Kelly Olynyk will probably be more of a four for us if we roll with that backup rotation of him and Luke Cornett. He can also serve as the de facto third string five. And as much as, Kelly Olynyk isn't as physical as Luke, he's still 6'11". Like, he can still definitely do what Bismack did for us last
Mm-hmm.
season. And then on top of that, we can move in Julian Champagnie, to that backup rotation. Yes, there might be, let me pull this up again. In that situation, maybe you'd have to play Keldon at the four and go a little small ball, but I'm cool with that if we have Kelly Olynyk at the five and it's in like these one game circumstances and you've still got, a Dylan Harper on the bench to also create buckets. But you can choose between Carter Bryant or Julian Champagnie in that situation to move up and elevate minutes. And I just went with Julian off rip because he's just played more. And, obviously he could easily slide into that third string role. But if we continue to see Carter progress, maybe he can just slide up into that four position as well. And again,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too all over the place with everything here, Ethan, but I do want to ask you this, because this was another thing, conversation point that I had written down, and I've been seeing it in the comments as well. We've kind of been talking about, at least on the roster when we've been pulling it up, we've been talking about Carter Bryant as a four. And I definitely do think that he has the potential to play that. But, still very young, and also does have the skill set to play the three as well. And really, if you were in a perfect world where, you're not having to worry about rosters and roster holes, probably Carter Bryant would be seen more of as a three. We've just kind of been talking about him in that context because of that hole on the roster and kind of pre Kelly Olynyk trade as well. Now, with all that being said, I do think that Carter Bryant has the athleticism and the vertical to play the four. I think you saw that in the game last night. Again, not to jump too much all over the place, but he was able to block a big. It wasn't Mo Bamba, but it was somebody named Bamba on the Philadelphia 76ers, who is, kind of an around the rim player for them. He blocked him from behind twice, dude. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And that was because of his vertical. And he is 6'7", yes, 6'6.5" without shoes, but he's listed as 6'7". I'll pull up the Spurs roster. You can see it right there under Chibuzo Ogbo, 6'7", 220. He's listed as a forward, which means he's going to play the four or the three. With all that being said, Ethan, I definitely hear y'all in the comments saying that, he's really truly a three, but I also think that his athleticism and defensive ability 100% allows him to play the three. So play the four. So in a situation, where we're resting Wemby and we're moving Kelly Olynyk to the backup five, you could elevate Carter Bryant, or, we could just roll with Julian Champagny and have Keldon play there. But again, Ethan, these are conversations that for the past like 3-4 years, we haven't been able to have with this roster.
100%. I think I personally would like to see him at the three, but you're completely right. He can play the four. Harrison Barnes and here are the exact same size. Harrison Barnes plays four and three, just depends. Early in his career, he played mostly three, then he transitioned to four, and now he goes back and forth with us. I think it'll probably be the same story for my guy Carter. And just looking at him in that bench unit, if you talk about moving Kelly Olynyk to the small ball five, I think he slides right in there at that backup four seamlessly because for the most part, you got Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Keldon, him, and then Kelly. Every rotation has at least one guy who necessarily can't create his own shot. You know what I mean, Jude? He's out
Yeah,
there to create defensive mismatches and really just be a dog off ball. That's perfect for him at that backup four spot. And we don't lose anything really to size. How tall is Jeremy Sohan? 6'8",
6'8".
6'9"?
He's 6'8". Yeah.
We're splitting hairs here.
I,
I think he fits perfectly as a three and a four. Maybe with a little more experience with his ball handling, he's more naturally a three, and that becomes his permanent
right.
position. But he can play both.
Yeah, and the other thing just about that conversation as well, we'll see what happens with Harrison Barnes moving forward. Maybe there is a world where we sign him for like 1 or 2 more years. He was out in Vegas yesterday. I think he's very valued in the community of
Yep.
San Antonio as well. So, like I said, maybe there's a world where he's here after this season, but there's also a world where maybe that's Carter Bryant, immediately sliding in for the starting position. Now, we're talking about 2027. We're getting crazy here, but I did want to talk about a lot of the roster lineup and stuff like that. And the last thing I kind of want to end this conversation on here, man, is just if it's not what we have on the board, what do you think the starting lineup would be?
If it's not this, I'd probably go. Can you pull it up real quick?
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Sorry,
No
I don't
worries.
want to make. I'll make sure I'm not forgetting a name. De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Victor Wembanyama.
And then that would make the bench Dylan Harper, Julian Champagny. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
actually,
Keldon Johnson.
and then with that would move Kelly Olynyk to just the backup five or the backup four.
Correct. And then you have
Okay,
Jeremy and Luke. So you
yeah.
basically just wouldn't play Kelly and you'd elevate Julian to the two.
Which that just, that's just it's whatever way you want to do it. Because at that point, you just have even more depth with Kelly Olynyk. But in my opinion, I definitely like this a
Me
little bit
too.
more. But if they end up doing with what we just said, I'm not mad at that either. I just wanted to bring that up because I'm sure there will be some other people who are like, I might think something else is going to happen.
There's probably going to be how many games in the preseason are there? 3. There's probably going to be 3 different starting lineups, Jude. To be honest, they're going to have to tinker with things. And the only reason I said the one that I said is because Devin Vassell is technically, I think, the second highest paid player on the team. So as an organization, I can understand them wanting him to start, right? Just like for the nature of he makes a lot of money,
Mhm.
he should be starting. But I think he just fits better with the current roster. I think he fits better as the sixth man.
Yeah. And to that point as well, last year we saw a lot of that starting lineup,
Yeah,
or that version of things where you have Devin at the three and then Harrison at the four. But that was also when we had a need for a backup five. And the closest thing that we had to that at the time was Jeremy. So I
true
wonder
that.
in this situation, do we go back to what we did at the start of last season? But then the other question you can ask yourself, technically, that was Greg Popovich as the head coach. Now it's Mitch Johnson. So all
Lot
in
of lot of different ways we could go with this. I prefer yours for the sake of conversation.
Yeah, all in time, we will find out. It's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, I definitely personally like this
Yeah.
myself. I mean, I even wouldn't hate a De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, Victor Wembanyama. You just switch Devin and Steph. Personally, I'd rather start Steph, especially with what we saw from him last season and the shooting progression at the end of the season. But honestly, Ethan, we could sit and talk about this forever. The biggest thing for me, dude, is look at the front court.
Yeah.
It's
Yep. We're nearly there. And we're probably gonna sign one more big, I would imagine.